Mark Slane with the United States Krav Maga Association. Today talking about that's not a realistic attack. You hear that a lot in martial arts circles. You hear that a lot in self-defense training. It's not a realistic attack. And, it makes me wonder, what do they call a realistic attack? Rory Miller, in his book Facing Violence, talks about he's been, I think it was 4 or 5 times, 5 let's say, that somebody tried to stab him or slash him with a knife. He said none of them were really what he would have considered realistic knife attacks, but if he wouldn't have blocked it and done something about it, he'd have got stabbed. So it would have felt realistic, even if it was an unrealistic knife attack. I've heard of other Krav Maga organizations taking out the pluck technique for the choke. And their thought is that's not a realistic choke. If somebody comes up to you, they're going to grab you and push you backwards. It's going to be with rage, with momentum, which sounds like it makes sense until you talk to cops. About 90% of chokes that they see are a domestic situation where he is holding her right there, looking her in the eyes, wanting her to see his power, wanting to look into her eyes. So the most common choke that, again, law enforcement sees is the one without a push. So how can we say that's not a realistic attack? It might not be realistic how I would do it because, I don't choke my wife, but she would kick my butt. But, that's a realistic attack. And not only is it realistic, it's the most common attack. So to say something's not a realistic attack without studying, without researching, without talking to law enforcement, the guys who see this stuff, to me is a big mistake. We talk all the time about the knife attack that comes from across the room. That's not realistic. They're to grab you. They're going to shank you. They're going to hockey punch. Yeah, if they know what they're doing. Again, talk to your law enforcement. The most common knife attack in the United States is, again, a domestic. One of them gets mad, grabs a knife, charges across the kitchen, tries to stab the other one. So again, we're saying something isn't a realistic attack when it ends up probably being the most common attack. This is just, again, research these things, study the heck out of them. Big time talk to cops. Again, cops are the ones going to the scenes where someone tried to stab somebody. So again, if the most common one they see is from 5 feet, 10 feet across the room because it's a domestic situation, how can I then go in front of a class and say, well, that's not a realistic knife attack that they come from that distance? And, I've been, shame on me, back when I was a new instructor, I used to say things like that. That's a martial arts technique coming from 10 foot across the room. Well, again, that's probably the most common one in the United States anyhow. And again, you'll see weird attacks in class. We'll want to do a headlock and, we want to step in front and pull them around. People just kind of reach around and not step in front. And I'm always like, that's not how that would go. But think about it. That person, if they would put somebody in a headlock, that's how they would have done it. That's realistic to them. Now, I've seen some weird things in class, and I always hesitate and I always tell, hey, not that I want to tell you how to attack, but here's how I want it to happen. Because we want to get reps in on this technique. But man, you see all kinds of weird things. So if that's how they're going to do it, that's how they're going to do it. That's real to them. You see all kinds of crazy things when you watch, videos. We watch a lot of dash cam videos, a lot of surveillance videos of real attacks. They look like crap. Even trained people who have some skills, when you get into that situation, you have this big adrenaline dump, you go to midbrain, big gross motor skills. I've seen a couple of times some very good Eskrima guys with sticks. They're in a real fight and they end up just taking a stick and wailing on the next guy. I mean, that's just what's coming out of them. Joe Rogan tells a story about back in the 70s, the Kung Fu was real big in New York City. 2 big Kung Fu masters squared off and had a big fight. He said it degraded into one of them was just on top of the other throwing haymakers. Then the other one got the upper hand. He was on top of him throwing haymakers. Their Kung Fu went out the window. To them, that probably wouldn't have been a realistic way they would ever attack because they've trained, for years and years and years on Kung Fu. But that's how it degraded. That's how it came out of them. Our techniques will degrade under stress, under exhaustion, under chaos, under fear. They're degrading. We're just using gross body motions. And again, this is one reason in Krav that we don't do a lot of fine motor skills where we're prying on a finger or having to get a specific target. We're just wailing away because that's where we're going to degrade. That's where we're going to come out at. Monkey brain degrading, the techniques are falling off. The dump, the adrenaline dump is the bane of self-defense instructors. It is going to make trained people much worse, and it's going to make untrained people actually better. It's just the adrenaline dump and the fight or flight, just the way it comes out of us. So again, be careful what you're calling a realistic attack, because no matter how weird the attack is and no matter how screwed up it is, somebody's been attacked that way. And to that person being attacked, that was probably felt pretty realistic. Mark Slane, United States Krav Maga Association.